Once upon a time, in the land of Israel, there was a young boy named David. David was the youngest of 8 brothers. His father's name was Jesse, and they lived in a town called Bethlehem. David was a shepherd, which means he took care of sheep. He loved God very much and sang beautiful songs to him while watching over the sheep. One day, God told his servant named Samuel to go to Bethlehem. God had chosen a new king from Jesse's family. Samuel was a prophet, which means he could hear God's voice. Samuel was a little worried because there was already a king named Saul, but God said,
"Don't worry, I will show you what to do."
When Samuel arrived in Bethlehem, he invited Jesse and his sons to a special sacrifice. Jesse called his 7 older sons to meet Samuel. The first son, Eliab, was tall and handsome. Samuel thought,
"Surely this is the one God has chosen."
But God said,
"Do not look at his appearance. I have not chosen him. People look at the outside, but I look at the heart."
One by one, Jesse's sons passed before Samuel, but God did not choose any of them. Samuel asked Jesse,
"Are these all your sons?"
Jesse replied,
"There is still the youngest, David, but he is out in the fields with the sheep."
Samuel said,
"Send for him. We will not sit down until he arrives."
So Jesse sent for David. When David arrived, he was glowing with health and had a fine appearance. God said to Samuel,
"Rise and anoint him, this is the one."
So Samuel took a horn of oil and anointed David in the presence of his brothers. From that day on, the Spirit of the Lord was with David. Not long after, a big problem came to the land of Israel. There was a giant named Goliath who was very mean and very strong. Goliath was a soldier for the Philistines, enemies of Israel. He wore heavy armor and carried a big sword. Every day, Goliath came out and shouted to the Israelite soldiers,
"Who will fight me? If you win, we will be your servants. But if I win, you will be our servants."
For 40 days, Goliath came forward every morning and evening and took his stand. The Israelite soldiers were scared. No one wanted to fight Goliath because he was so big and strong. Even King Saul, the king of Israel, was afraid. David's 3 oldest brothers had followed Saul to the war. Their names were Eliab, Abinadab, and Shammah. David was the youngest. Jesse, their father, was old and could not go to the battlefield. One day, Jesse said to David,
"Take this roasted grain and these 10 loaves of bread to your brothers. Also, take these 10 cheeses to the commander of their unit. See how your brothers are doing and bring back some assurance from them."
Early in the morning, David left the flock with a shepherd, loaded up, and set out as Jesse had directed. He reached the camp as the army was going out to its battle positions, shouting the war cry. Israel and the Philistines were drawing up their lines facing each other. David left his things with the keeper of supplies, ran to the battle lines, and asked his brothers how they were. As he was talking with them, Goliath, the Philistine champion, stepped out from his lines and shouted his usual defiance. Then David heard it. Whenever the Israelites saw the man, they all fled from him in great fear. David asked the men standing near him,
"What will be done for the man who kills this Philistine and removes this disgrace from Israel? Who is this uncircumcised Philistine that he should defy the armies of the living God?"
They repeated to him what they had been saying and told him,
"This is what will be done for the man who kills him."
When Eliab, David's oldest brother, heard him speaking with the men, he burned with anger at him and asked,
"Why have you come down here? And with whom did you leave those few sheep in the wilderness? I know how conceited you are and how wicked your heart is. You came down only to watch the battle."
"Now what have I done?"
said David.
"Can't I even speak?"
He then turned away to someone else and brought up the same matter, and the men answered him as before. What David said was overheard and reported to Saul, and Saul sent for him. David said to Saul,
Let no one lose heart on account of this Philistine. Your servant will go and fight him.
Saul replied,
You are not able to go out against this Philistine and fight him. You are only a young man, and he has been a warrior from his youth.
But David said to Saul,
Your servant has been keeping his father's sheep. When a lion or a bear came and carried off a sheep from the flock, I went after it, struck it, and rescued the sheep from its mouth. When it turned on me, I seized it by its hair, struck it, and killed it. Your servant has killed both the lion and the bear. This uncircumcised Philistine will be like one of them because he has defied the armies of the living God. The Lord who rescued me from the paw of the lion and the paw of the bear will rescue me from the hand of this Philistine.
Saul said to David,
Go, and the Lord be with you.
Then Saul dressed David in his own tunic. He put a coat of armor on him and a bronze helmet on his head. David fastened on his sword over the tunic and tried walking around because he was not used to them.
I cannot go in these,
he said to Saul,
because I am not used to them.
So he took them off. Then he took his staff in his hand, he chose 5 smooth stones from the stream, put them in the pouch of his shepherd's bag, and, with his sling in his hand, approached the Philistine. Meanwhile, the Philistine, with his shield-bearer in front of him, kept coming closer to David. He looked David over and saw that he was little more than a boy, glowing with health and handsome, and he despised him. He said to David,
Am I a dog, that you come at me with sticks?
And the Philistine cast David by his gods.
Come here, he said, and I'll give your flesh to the birds and the wild animals.
David said to the Philistine,
You come against me with sword and spear and javelin, but I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. This day the Lord will deliver you into my hands, and I'll strike you down and cut off your head. This very day I will give the carcasses of the Philistine army to the birds and the wild animals, and the whole world will know that there is a God in Israel. All those gathered here will know that it is not by sword or spear that the Lord saves, for the battle is the Lord's, and he will give all of you into our hands.
As the Philistine moved closer to attack him, David ran quickly toward the battle line to meet him. Reaching into his bag and taking out a stone, he slung it and struck the Philistine on the forehead. The stone sank into his forehead, and he fell face down on the ground. So David triumphed over the Philistine with a sling and a stone. Without a sword in his hand, he struck down the Philistine and killed him. David ran and stood over him. He took hold of the Philistine's sword and drew it from the sheath. After he killed him, he cut off his head with the sword. When the Philistines saw that their hero was dead, they turned and ran. Then the men of Israel and Judah surged forward with a shout and pursued the Philistines to the entrance of Gath and to the gates of Ekron. Their dead were strewn along the Sharem road to Gath and Ekron. When the Israelites returned from chasing the Philistines, they plundered their camp. David took the Philistines' head and brought it to Jerusalem. He put the Philistines' weapons in his own tent. This story teaches us that no matter how small we are, we can do big things with God's help. David was just a young boy, but he trusted God and was very brave. God helped him beat the giant, Goliath. So, whenever you feel scared or face a big problem, remember that God is with you and can help you, just like he helped David. Thank you for watching the incredible story of David and Goliath. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like this video to show your support. Share it with your friends and family to spread this inspiring tale of bravery and faith. Subscribe to our channel for more amazing Bible stories and uplifting content. Comment below with your favorite part of the story or any other stories you'd like to hear. Stay tuned for more exciting and heartwarming videos that bring timeless stories to life. Remember, with faith you can conquer any giant. See you in the next video.